And welcome back to the Constitution Line by Line. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier. I teach history,
political science, and we are in Article 4, Section 2, Clause 2.
Got it.
Okay? A person charged in any state with treason.
We're talking treason again.
Treason keeps coming up. It was a big deal to the framers.
So,
a person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crimes, who shall flee from justice and be found in another state, shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime.
So we are going to extradite you from wherever you ran to back for the crimes that you committed in your home state.
And this, of course, extradition.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Makes perfect sense. That's why you have to keep running till you hit a foreign boundary.
Exactly.
That's why so many people came to Texas. They're dodging their felonies.
Texas attracted the best people.
Well, it did. I mean, if you kind of wanted a do-over, you just splashed across the Sabine, and here you were.
Yay.
And then you could wait for the Mexicans to figure out how awful you might be.
All right. Now, what gets me is the phrase, shall be delivered up. In other words, you cross the state borders to escape a crime you committed. That state arrests you. They deliver you.
Yeah,
up
they
to
put
the
you
other.
put you in a
way
van.
To put it. What is it? A FedEx sort of thing?
Well, delivered up is a nice antique turn of phrase.
Yeah, it is.
The other one I like is stand and deliver. If you're being held up.
Yeah.
Stand and deliver.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be delivered up. Same sort of deal.
Delivered up.
We're going to mug you for your prisoner because they're coming back to ours.
So anyway, this is very simple. We're all familiar with it. It's simple extradition. Sometimes it's called interstate rendition.
Yeah, rendition.
But and you might have heard of rendition in terms of the war on terror.
Yeah. Where
people who had engaged in acts of terror against the United States were captured by the United States and renditioned to other countries.
Extraordinarily.
Yes.
Extraordinary rendition.
Right. And they were often subject to torture in those places.
This it's interesting because Ted Bundy has all of a sudden been back in the news.
Oh, yes.
And that guy committed crimes in so many states. He could have been transported back to Washington. He could have been transported to Colorado or to Utah. No, they had the best case against him in Florida, and the other states said, fine.
You get him.
You get him and you cook him. So,
yep. And they did. Yeah. And by the way, this is something that's not uncommon. You have negotiations among the various states.
Who's got the best case?
Who's got the best case, and also the federal government can get involved.
Yeah.
And so, there's these kind of negotiations, and where do you get extradited to? So.
But it's interesting, though, because there's a budget implication.
Oh, you better believe it.
And so Florida had to go through the expenses of convicting and executing this guy, housing him, etc.
Right.
And Colorado was off the hook, and I'm sure they were like, strike that one off the books.
But sometimes states, because of the horrendousness of a crime, want to make sure they get their crack at somebody too.
Well, sure.
So you can get
especially
the death penalty.
if the prosecuting attorney is an elected position.
Yes, and so you can get the death penalty in one state, and another state says, "Hey, it's our turn. We want the person, and we're going to try him here." So think of Timothy McVeigh. He was convicted and sentenced to death at the federal government level, and also the state of Oklahoma.
Wanted to crack at him.
Yeah, and they both sentenced him to death. And at least I believe Oklahoma did, but in the end, the federal government was one who executed him. So, because he blew up a federal building.
John Brown.
Okay.
Is an interesting case. Doesn't have to do with rendition or being extradited because he was captured in Virginia. But he was from New York.
Okay.
So he's a citizen, citizen of New York, citizen of the United States from New York. He's caught in Virginia and tried in Virginia and executed in Virginia.
Okay.
For treason against Virginia.
Even though he's from New York.
That's right.
Now, this was when?
This is 1859.
Okay. So when everybody was united in these United States.
That's exactly right.
So, all right. By the way, clearly this clause that we just read about extradition is just a add-on to the full faith and credit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the two of them go together. So,
but you got to put it in there, or people say, well, it's not in there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that's our line. And another line next time.